Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror. I am your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner and operator of Something Wicked Entertainment Events, and welcome to our podcast this week, in which we delve deep into the bowels of the horror genre of all different decades and all different subgenres in order to take a kind of like a prism to the many different ideals of what we think of horror. Now, what we're doing this month is we are kind of focusing on some specialty items, specialty movies, specialty subgenre of horror, because a lot of times it just doesn't get looked at in the same critical eye as some of our other brethren. So we are taking a look at aquatic horror films this month. And I know, we're trying to stay away from all the plethora of Jaws ripoffs and Jaws sequels and anything that has to do with sharks. So instead, we're taking a look at the reptile world of the animal kingdom for our aquatic films. And we're going to take a look at, Alligator, the original Alligator. I can't remember what year it's from, but Alligator, and I know you've all have heard or
1980 is when it's from.
1980. That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it out loud and think I was going to be wrong about that. And for everyone out there listening, that there is the voice of Dave Watkins.
What's up?
Dave is going to be joining us on this conversation on 1980s Alligator, which I guess is 45 years old this year. So that is going to make this actually special discussion. So for all of you out there who have never listened to our show, I take a special guest on the show and we kind of discuss a single film, the ins and outs, the all arounds, the underneaths and aboves about this film, whether it is a great film that the world has lauded with praise, or it is the bowels of the underworld who has, the film has been forgotten over the ages because it's so bad. So we kind of look at all those type of films. Thankfully, with Alligator, we are going to be discussing a film that has I hope, a pretty good reputation because it's actually a pretty damn good film. That being said, tell me, Dave, a little bit about some of your thoughts on this film, and if you even like aquatic horror films.
Well, there's some water in this one. It's not hardcore aquatic. I'm gonna say one thing about the film, but it is when you mentioned Jaws. To me, this does seem like Jaws with an alligator. Jaws is definitely the inspiration for this film, though. It does different. I mean, this is a 1980 film, but it feels very 1970s, and so which is kind of works in its favor. So it does have that kind of 70s flavor to it, and even it's a lot more violent than Jaws is, even though it's not as violent as some movies are nowadays. But they do pretty good with the practical special effects, and there is some people getting ripped up by some alligators or one alligator.
Well, that's the thing that sets this one apart from Jaws is we see the alligator a lot in this film. It may start off as just an eyeball opening here and there, but once that alligator leaves the sewer and starts making its way through the city, we see a lot of this alligator, which is why I actually enjoy this film, because it is a alligator chase film more so than say Jaws, which kind of takes little tangents to get to know a lot of the characters more than this movie ever does. This is all about watching some people get eaten and watching some entertaining death sequences.
That alligator looks pretty good too. When the alligator itself, it does look pretty strong. It's a big ass alligator.
Mm-hmm. I think they reference it at about 30 feet somewhere. But for any of you who may or may not have seen this film before, essentially, Robert Forster plays a detective.
David
Madison.
something.
Madison.
David Madison.
Yeah, Detective Madison, who is the homicide detective at his precinct, but he has a bad reputation because his previous or one of his previous partners was killed in the line of duty. You learn about how that happens later on in the film, but because of that bad reputation, it's chased him to his new precinct, and he's just trying to be a good detective. And unfortunately, when the film opens, the first thing we see with him is that he's finding an arm uh, an
Yeah.
arm in the water system that should not be there.
And when you see that, the first thing I thought was Jaws. It's like,
And and they make no bones about this movie, about what it's about, because even though this is primarily this one's a detective mystery that doesn't really go very far. It does start off with the alligator story, which is quite interesting, because Marissa, who you'll learn, Marissa is a little girl, so a little girl is out watching this alligator wrestling competition between a man and alligator, and the man doesn't exactly wrestle the alligator. He gets his leg bitten by the
yeah.
alligator, which is quite entertaining. I'd forgotten that scene was in the movie
Yeah.
until I rewatched it.
Yeah, you ever been down in Florida where they do that stuff with the alligators? Like they so
I,
yeah, I mean I've seen it before, like not someone getting bitten, but they'll take those alligators and they'll do stuff like that to them, and they'll sit and talk about how that alligator could turn on them. But I guess they kind of have the groove down, but people are crazy like that down there. They used to sell the alligators like they do in the film. I remember when I was a kid, they used to sell the alligators. I wanted one, and then someone told me like maybe someone like one of my parents' friends or one of my uncles or something. They were like, "Yeah, you don't want to buy one of those alligators. You flush them down the toilet, they go in the sewer in the city, and then get big in the sewer." So that was like a reference to this film that I didn't know at the time.
well, that's exactly what happens in this movie, and I
Yeah,
heard that story too. But
yeah,
I lived in Louisiana when I was really young. When this movie came out, I was living in Louisiana actually,
okay, yeah.
and I believe that, and I could be mistaken, but I seem to remember as a kid people selling alligators as well as pets.
Yeah.
I could be
Maybe
completely wrong.
I'm maybe mistaken too. I mean, it does seem like maybe it's like it could be something where it wasn't. I'm pretty sure that they were doing it though for a while.
See, I have that
Eh,
feeling too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were doing it until it became a problem. You know what I'm saying? It's
And of course, the and I did not watch this. So I did not watch this when it came out. I probably did not see this film until right before the second one came out. For some reason, I remember exactly when the second one was released, and I could imagine myself watching the first one just to know what the hell I'm watching with the second one. And I can't remember when that one came out, but it came out much later than this.
right. Yeah, I think it was somewhat sometime later, but
Yeah,
I've never actually seen the second one. There is a Blu-ray release from
yeah. Well, the thing about
1991 was the second one.
Yeah,
Pretty,
see, much
yeah,
much later.
yeah,
So I would say I probably, if that was the sequel was in 91, I probably saw this movie in 1990.
yeah,
This was not a film for some reason that I went after looking for. I can guarantee you that.
yeah,
uh, this was a movie I probably saw only because there was a sequel.
yeah,
I probably would have watched it eventually, after studying about the fact that John Sayles wrote it, and he's a highly looked upon director in his own right now. But he started off as a writer, writing some great horror films before then. But
yeah. He did Piranha. We've
yeah,
covered
Piranha.
that, not covered that before.
So that being said, I don't have the history with this film as I would some of the other films that we've discussed before. So I watched this much later. And me enjoying monster films, enjoying stuff like Jaws, I kind of that's the reason why I went back to watch this. Someone did a sequel, and I went back to watch this one. I said, "Ooh."
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
since then, I've seen it a lot because I know who Robert Forster is, and I really enjoy his performance in this movie. I really enjoy him as an actor, in a lot of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. No, I like Robert Forster too. He is good. He looks a lot. He's not that young in this film, but he looks younger than I'm used to seeing him. Seeing that, it's like I really started noticing when Jackie Brown came out around then. That's
Mhm.
kind of his like re-envision. But he was a great actor though.
Yeah, yeah. And hell, this is 45 years ago when he did this one.
Yeah, 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 yeah. He's good in it though. I wonder. Yeah, he's there's a little bit. There's some pretty funny dialogue in there that John Sells wrote. That was a very character-driven thing about his hair. He's
Yeah,
got his hair. He's got this little thing in his hair that comes down, and then someone makes a comment. It's just like such a that's such a great like character thing though. And they talk about his hair. Then later on, he talks about it. He acts like it's not bothered him. Then later on, when he's talking to like that Marissa character, he starts mentioning it later. So that's
It's
some cool stuff that John Sayles put into the script that helps with characters.
well, that was the smart thing because actually you're getting something I want to discuss is the very first scene with Robert Forster is at the pet store where he's buying the puppy dog, and
Yeah.
the store owner mentions that exact same thing about him and his hair, and he says, some people come in here and buy a dog because they're getting old, like,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's
It's
a
like, yeah,
recurring theme throughout the whole movie. That's so hilarious.
can you imagine that shit? Like some ass, like everyone's like all up in his ass about his hair. Like 3 or 4 people say shit about him. It's like, why don't you mind your own damn business? I mean, the people talking to him's hair don't look that good to begin with. Especially that guy in the pet store. He's like,
I know,
I think
but
he actually mentions it too, though. He's like, yeah, I'm already bald up here. I think that's what throws it because he's like, he's saying that he's the same as him and his hair's like really bald.
But it does two things. That's a very important scene because it sets up Robert Forster's character, give you a little bit of idea of what he's going through, and then of course it sets up that the pet store owner who is illegally providing dogs to a research facility and
Yeah,
then disposing of the dogs after the experiments are over into the sewer, which is how we get to a giant 30-foot long alligator in the sewer. It I don't remember this growing up. So these are details that I glossed over watching the film, even in 1990. The fact that the dogs were being injected with hormones and then being disposed of in the sewer, and then the alligator is doubling in size.
right.
I never remembered the scene where they find the dog of the woman, and the first comment they said is the dog was really small when the woman last saw it 2 months ago, and
Yeah.
now it's a giant dog, and they can't figure out why.
She
Why?
had like she has like a little sweater that went on this when it
Yeah,
was a small
that's,
dog.
I didn't remember that
Yeah,
scene at all. I did not remember any
yeah,
of that until I rewatched. I was like,
yeah.
oh shit, this is a
Yeah.
really clever script.
You probably blocked that out. It's so awful that what they're doing to those dogs and
Yeah.
like but it really helps. Like two things about it. It's really horrific that they're taking the dogs and the puppies. They want specifically puppies, and then they do the hormone injections. They do the experiment, and then they kill them, and then they go dump them in the sewer. And then the alligators eat them, and that gets the alligator big.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing about that is like say for instance like we talked about Lake Placid before.
Mm-hmm.
In that film, with any big alligator, you're going to have the situation when that alligator eats like a cow. He's going to be full and he's not going to be going after people and eating them. But this one is a little different because you have a reason for it to keep killing because it's got these whatever they're experimenting on these dogs with, he's eating them. So he's got something in his system that gives him like a reason beyond like just a regular alligator to keep
Mm-hmm.
killing and eating people.
No, I agree with that too, because those are the things I picked up on when I rewatched the film that would have been over my head when I was younger. I would have never thought about that. To be honest with you, when I saw the movie, it was a giant alligator killing people movie.
Right, yeah. But I think with anything though, it's like with any giant monster thing, you always got to think if they eat too much stuff, they're going to get full. So that's kind of you've got to figure out a way to ride around that to make it like more of a dangerous situation because that alligator come out and eat a few people, he'll be full, and then he'll just be lethargic for like a while. But luckily, like I'm sure I hadn't seen the second one. The second one's called The Mutation. I'm sure that one has even more of a reason for him to like keep eating. It's like,
Well, we'll have to make sure that you watch that so we can talk about the mutation later
I've,
too.
I've got a copy of it, just hadn't watched it yet. But
Oh Jesus. Um, yes, mutated alligators in the sewer, and the little girl from the very beginning is actually grows up 12 years later and becomes an expert on alligators and reptiles and everything else. And she ends up being the doctor that Robert Forster's character Madison ends up falling for. Now, obviously, the film has that whole romantic thing, like most of the films of the era did, where it's why would these two ever get together other than they just it just needs to happen in the movie for some
yeah,
reason.
I got some some thoughts on
You got
that.
some thought? Okay.
It's,
Okay.
uh, now, I think like I agree. It's like to me, it feels very forced in this film. It's like it's very forced, more so than normally. What's interesting about it, she looks lot younger than him, which I don't have a problem with that. And I think she's the actress Robin Riker. She's quite cute, and there's some chemistry between them. And for the first part of the film, when he first starts interacting with him, he has no interest in her. He's actually doesn't want her around, and he's being a dick to her, which I guess this kind of works. Like a lot of times, like you see this happening. Some guy will be a dick to a girl, and suddenly they like him more because he's being a dick. But he pretty much doesn't want her around. And then at one point, a new asshole shows up. That Colonel Brock shows up and takes over, and he pretty much tells Robert Forster's character to go fuck off. And then so he leaves. And then at that point, he shows back up at her lab, and suddenly he's interested in her and wants her help, you know. So but then then there's like the connection. Then like the later part of the film, like second half of the film, like it becomes kind of a romantic drama between them. It will show them going out on little dates, doing
Hmm.
research about the alligator, and then it should cut to the alligator killing some people, and then back to their little date things, and it I mean, it's there, but to me, it's like it's something that I don't think it quite works. It's very underdeveloped. It's something that I think could have worked a lot better had they not pushed it so far so early. If they
Yeah.
would have waited until later to really push them into sleeping together or making out or go, if they should have like had that kind of happen. Not even they never should have slept together in the film. It should have been implied that they might in the near future, but it should have ended with them having that instead of pushing it. I think anyway. So
Well, yeah. Well, that's why I say it's a product of its time
yeah,
because they used to do
yeah,
that a lot in movies back then. Whereas nowadays, they probably do exactly what you say, which is kind of develop the relationship, and then at the very end, they'll say, "Well, let's go on a date." Blah 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 blah.
yeah. I think a really good example I think that works really well in is Speed with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. Like that chemistry between them, and then they kiss near the end of it, but it's not, and it really works. To me, that's one of the better instances of that. But then the next film, they ended up breaking up between it. But but to me, it's like that. I mean, there was some chemistry. I'm not gonna say there's not chemistry between these two characters. It is there, but they push it too far too early.
Mm. Well, I no, I agree with you. That's why I made a comment about that. I agree with you 100% about that. But what I did like about the film is the fact that Forrester's Madison, Detective Madison, is still hung up over the fact that people think that he killed his first or was responsible for his first partner, and then his next partner, Sergeant Kelly, who goes down to the
Yeah.
sewer with him, and then
All
when
right.
he realizes that there's an actual alligator down there, he has this reoccurring dilemma that people who work with him tend to die. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, and that's really a cool sequence too, when him and the other guy go down in the sewer. And what really works, I mean, it's kind of that plot point's a little. It happens in Jaws too, where no one believes him about the alligator. Luckily, it's very brief in this film. It only lasts about maybe 20 minutes, and then they start believing him. But then they start doing other stupid political shit to him after that. So,
yeah. Well, the great thing about that for me is the fact that it's one of his guilt things that goes on. It's the thing that pushes him to keep going because at 2/3 in the movie he has that nightmare sequence. It's all done in red. It's actually really I never noticed it before, but it's actually really well done. Where it's when Kelly is dragged away by the alligator in the
right.
sewer, but it's
Yeah.
played backwards. It starts from when Kelly was already pulled away, then rewinds itself to the very beginning of that sequence where Kelly is first bitten by the alligator, and then it unfolds again as he's dragged away, and then of course Madison wakes up from the nightmare, and part of what drives him for that the rest of the movie after that is that he doesn't want to see anyone get killed, despite the fact he's already been fired from his job. Like when he gets fired from his job, it's like, it's a job, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to go do something else, or when he gets dismissed by the crocodile or the alligator hunter. He says, what am I supposed to do? Is what he says after his job is more or less taken away from him. So he just walks away and says, okay, fine, it's not my job anymore. You go ahead and find the alligator.
But he doesn't walk away though. I think that he doesn't walk away because that's when he goes back to Marissa in her lab and he starts trying to get her to help him continue the search for the alligator. He feels like he needs to hunt the alligator down, and they're trying to figure out other ways of doing it. So he's even though he walks away from it, he still stays involved with it, with trying to track the alligator down.
So, see, I saw it differently. I didn't see him tracking the alligator down. I saw him as trying to figure out why the alligator is twice as big as he should be. So he starts investigating and going back to the lab,
Yeah,
trying to figure out what exactly is really going on there. And, he goes back there the first time and he just finds a little bit of information and then he gets fired. And then
yeah.
after that, it becomes now they've pushed this button.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's like a pharmaceutical company is what it is.
Thank you,
Yeah,
pharmaceutical company.
yeah. And it's like there's this other guy, like older guy in charge of the whole thing, and he's got like a lot of pull. He's got so much pull that he calls the police station. He's like, "You need to fire this guy. He's getting too close to our pharmaceutical, like whatever they're doing, you know."
Steroids is all
Yeah,
over.
yeah, trying, yeah, you know, doing their experiments on dogs and trying to have a growth hormone to make them big or whatever they're trying to do. But he,
They're trying to solve the food shortage problem,
is
and
that
I
what it
guess
is?
that they mentioned that just briefly, like that's
Yeah.
the whole reason behind what they're doing. But for some reason, they have to experiment on dogs instead of food to make
Yeah.
this happen.
Well, you think you know, it's really odd that they've picked dogs to do it, but I mean, usually they do mice or something else. But I guess dogs in this instance might be easier because you have a lot of stray dogs around in the city, so probably a lot of them would have been. But he does ask specifically for puppies, which makes it even worse. But if it was like stray dogs, they'd have to execute anyway. I guess it might make it's not necessarily a humane way of doing things, but it makes it sense that they would there's an oversupply of dogs, but they're just asking for puppies. I guess that does happen too with puppies though. Like when there's litters of puppies and there's suddenly you have an oversupply of them.
Well, also keep in mind that the pet store owner isn't just getting stray dogs. He's literally capturing dogs with collars and everything, and then taking those off of the dog. That's what you see. He takes
Yeah,
off the collars. I never noticed that either till I
yeah.
rewatched it.
It's
He
kind of
takes,
what happens like in body snatcher films where they're making money off of snatching the body. It happened in real life too, but like they were making money off of cadavers, and suddenly in order to get cadavers more quickly, they started like killing people. It's like that there was a case of that actually happened, but in films that happens a lot too, though, because it,
yeah.
it becomes like we need more, so we're gonna have to just kill somebody and bring the cadaver. But yeah, I mean, it's a yeah, that's a pretty strong point. I didn't notice it before either that he's taking the dogs off. I mean, the collars off. A lot of I think it's some subtleties not going on there with that whole sequence that you may not notice, and it is early sequence because he goes into the dog shop looking for a dog,
Hmm.
and that guy's all nervous acting and starts talking to him about his hair. I guess that's why he talks to him about his hair because he's later on he says the cop came in there and I was so nervous
Yeah.
and he just came in there to buy a dog. It's like,
Yeah, see, those are the things I never noticed until I rewatched it. Too. I noticed that too. I was like,
yeah,
he's nervous because he thinks that the police is there for asking questions about what he's doing illegally, but
yeah,
he's just there for a dog.
yeah. That guy gets killed pretty early and pretty gruesomely. That alligator eats him.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's well, the thing is, it parallels what happens to the other political people who try
yeah,
and cover up this whole thing at the big party at the last bit of the movie. Which when you're younger, you don't see all these little details like this, and that also is the great thing of Sales having written this. He's good. He was a great writer then. He's a great writer now, but
yeah,
he was even a great writer then, even though dealing with a giant alligator movie or a giant or a bunch of piranhas, he's able to kind of add these details in it to make them seem more than what they actually are and or should be. Because we can back in the 80s, people would have been just fine with a freaking alligator movie eating people. And he adds these little subtleties into it to make these films rewatchable,
Right.
enjoyable. I mean, the alligator is seen a lot during the daylight hours as well in this movie. And I wanted to get into that because the city doesn't try and shut anything down in this movie like they do in Jaws. They actually send freaking battalions of people after this damn alligator.
Yeah,
First,
including some kids and stuff too out there.
yeah,
Yeah.
first to try and flush the alligator out, they send in these freaking soldiers that bang trash cans, but they got rockets and freaking huge ass machine guns and all this
Yeah, yeah.
stuff. And I'm like, dude,
Yeah. It's really a pretty big movie though, if you look at it
yeah,
in terms of some of the stuff you see on screen, especially in the second half of the film
mhm,
when that starts happening and there's like boat wrecks and
yeah,
explosions and all this shit, you know? It goes pretty big. It made money. It had a $1.75 million budget and it made about 6.5 million, which isn't a huge success, but it is a moderate success.
oh yeah,
But it has a lot on screen though, and it's like, when you watch it, especially for that time period and the stunts and the alligator looks good and how many extras they have in those scenes with the
yeah.
guns and all that. Yeah.
I mean, even when they start, what was the soldiers come back out, that the scene in the sewers, but when the boat sequence is in broad daylight, giant shark alligators killing people underwater, and the thing that I remember the most about the film is the sequence where the alligator has been sitting in the domestic pool, and of course, one of the kids at night during the
Yeah.
party is meant to walk the plank. And of course, he walks right off the plank into the jaws of the alligator.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, that's right. I forgot this was in this
Yeah.
movie.
That was real fucked up when that happened. I think they actually pushed them off the damn
They
thing, didn't
did.
they? The kids did. Think of how guilty they probably felt after that. You imagine that? They throw this kid in the water and all this blood everywhere, man. That was crazy.
Yeah, but there's kids and all this. There's kids used in this film a lot because
Yeah.
the kids who are playing in the streets who flick off the cops,
Yeah.
who then later the alligator comes straight through the freaking sewer and the pavement and goes after the
Yeah.
cop and eats them, and then you watch the kid watching
Yeah.
this shit. And he's like
Yeah.
traumatized.
Yeah, that's like a huge moment though when that alligator comes out of that sewer. From then on, the alligator's like shown really good, but it's just
Yeah,
like, oh, what? I guess we're seeing the alligator. You know, it's about halfway through the film, and it's like, all right, I guess we're seeing this thing.
yeah. I mean, once
Yeah,
you see it the first time, they don't stop showing it, and it's
yeah,
really good. The alligator practical effects are really good, and
yeah.
they
It
still
did look
hold
really
up.
good.
At
Yeah,
least when I was rewatching it.
I felt like, yeah, it looked really good. I felt like one shot looked like it may have been claymation. I'm not sure or not. It was moving like it was like a kind of high angle shot over the top of it.
Yes,
It looked fairly
yes.
convincing for what it was, but it almost felt like it wasn't. It had to be claymation or something like that, you know?
Yeah, that's the one sequence I had a question about too. Well, to be honest with you, that might be the only sequence with a real alligator.
Yeah, yeah. You think it might have been real? Yeah, it could have been though. Yeah, because if you have that high angle shot, it could be like a real alligator that you can't tell how big it is, you know?
It
Yeah.
would be the only weird shot that looks. You're right. I noticed that shot too. I said this one looks a little odd. I couldn't figure out
Yeah.
what it was. I didn't think about claymation though. I just thought it looked
Yeah.
odd.
You probably, yeah. I mean, there's probably real alligators. Like the first scene when the guy gets bitten in the alligator thing, pond's a real alligator. But yeah, I mean, most of it's probably like a puppet, like alligator, or like kind of like Jaws, you know?
Jaws never worked.
Yeah, yeah,
Bruce never worked.
yeah, yeah.
And I made a comment because I didn't realize that this alligator actually had a name in the movie because Marissa names the alligator at the very beginning.
She
Ramon.
named
I have to say that. I never noticed that
she
she
named
named
it what? What'd you say it was?
Ramon.
Ramon. Okay,
Yeah.
that's an odd name.
So when she gets the little baby alligator, she takes it
Yeah,
home.
yeah,
She names it Ramon, and we have to assume that because this her alligator gets dropped into the sewer, and then we jump 12 years later into a giant alligator in the sewer, that it's
yeah,
her alligator that we're seeing. So
yeah.
that would be Ramon in the sewer, and it's her alligator that she doesn't know it was her original alligator.
Right, right, yeah.
But
which that's yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool the way that they don't like focus on her character. It takes a long time to see her as an adult in the film. It's probably like 20 something minutes into the film or
yeah.
longer, you know.
No, no,
Um,
no, no. I mean, they did exactly how it should have been, and the reason why it works is because the Madison and Marissa character have that conversation about what their backgrounds is, uh,
yeah,
and so she kind of relays a lot of the stuff that came in between how she got to where she was, which helps out immensely. And of course, we see her mother again. We saw her at the beginning of the movie, and then we see her again 12 years later. Um, and this is all stuff I didn't pick up until rewatching it. I
yeah,
hate to say it, I haven't watched Alligator in a long time. Um, so a lot of stuff I've forgotten.
right. You know, it's like last time I watched it, they had a 4K release of it, Scream Factory in 2022. But I was like, when I went to watch it, I was like, yeah, I think this came out like this 4K came out like a year or two ago, and I was like, what? 2022? I can't believe it's been that long at this point. You know, it's like what? But not that it's that long, but it's a lot longer than I thought it was.
Mhm.
But it was definitely a different watch too on this one, and when I watched it that time, it was definitely saw different things.
Yeah.
That romance subplot definitely stuck out a lot more this time, I think, because
Now, do you think this is a very effective horror film? The way that John Sayles approached it and the director approached the way of doing it? Because in this movie, you see the monster a lot, as
yeah.
opposed to very little. And is it still a scary film as opposed to just being an interesting little? Because it's got those little action moments in it as well, and it's told from the perspective of a detective, so it's got a different vibe than say Jaws does.
Right. And you know, Jaws, I think Jaws like the thing about Jaws, I really like the back and forth between the three guys, you know, which this doesn't quite have that.
Mm.
Not that it has to have it, but I think the idea is effective because I could tell you from being young and people talking about the film, I think this affected a lot of people, and it really made people think about flushing alligators down the toilet and becoming big in the sewers. I think it's made people afraid of the sewers, and it wasn't until it came out that replaced the alligator in the sewer, you know? So I think it worked. Yeah,
You might be absolutely right about that. I didn't think about that, but you
yeah,
could be right. People were afraid of putting alligators in the sewers, and now they're afraid of
yeah.
freaking clowns in the sewers.
Yeah. But
That's
they were afraid to go into the sewer because there might be an alligator in the sewer. And then you know, just like they were afraid of the ocean, because Jaws might be out in the ocean. You know?
oh, gee.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it does have that almost like that you know the late '70s like focus on detective work,
Mhm.
like Italian giallos and things of that nature, which really focused on a character, even if it wasn't always a detective, it was like a character who became a detective and even during the story trying to figure out what was going on, and kind of what this detective does when he's even not a detective anymore in the second half of the film. He still continues to be a detective.
Mhm.
Um,
Which is
but
interesting because he's trying to answer the questions that the audience already knows for the most
yeah, yeah.
part.
Because you see, there are scenes, yeah. Because there are scenes that the audience sees that the main character doesn't see, like the shop owner talking to the doctor guy, bringing the and things of that nature.
Mhm.
So
And the politician when it starts
yeah,
getting heavier in the more political aspects of the film, which makes the final sequence very interesting when they're at the Slade's party, the politician Slade.
it was like a
They're
wedding party. Yeah,
and the alligator makes its way there,
yeah,
which is fitting, because you know the two main political adversaries get eaten up by the
yeah.
alligator.
Which is just desserts for the
Mhm.
audience, but with the alligator wouldn't even know that they were involved with it. But he does seem to target the people that he should, which I think is just a script thing, and not like the alligator wouldn't know. I
Oh
wouldn't
yeah,
think.
almost definitely. Yeah, most definitely. You know, John Sayles was trying to come up with a cohesive script where
Yeah,
where everyone got their comeuppance.
yeah. And yeah, that one, the worst one, like the older guy who's like in charge of the thing, making all the phone calls, he's like gets in his limo and the alligator goes and crushes the limo. It's like, that's pretty great when that happens.
Yeah, yeah. And what was I about to say? I was about to make another comment on some of the characters in the film. The hunter who goes
Yeah,
who underestimates the alligator because he never believes it's as big as what Forrester says it is.
yeah,
Goes into the alleyway with the only part that plays really really old or borderline very old, which is that he hires three African American kids to
yeah,
be his eyes and ears on the streets, and they come to an alley in which he finds the alligator and meets his end with one of the better death sequences because the alligator pretty much swallows him almost whole.
yeah. There's Henry Sylvia plays the guy. He's
Henry, thank you.
yeah, yeah. He's a great character actor who's
Uh-huh.
around for westerns, and he played. You ever see Dick Tracy? He's played
Yeah.
one of the gangsters. It's crazy. The makeup to me, I always like to see him with that makeup on. But he's great. He's a great actor. Played Colonel Brock. Um, it makes sense. I mean, it may seem dated, but even I mean, it probably would have been better had at least one of the guys not been African American, or if one of them would have been like a white dude. But it makes sense you would hire people who are off the streets to help you, and they seem to be drug addicts maybe, and
Uh-huh.
and and they're out, because you would want to hire somebody who would be willing to work
For
for
ten
a low amount of
dollars.
money. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then one of them, the I guess the one who's the bravest one, or the one in charge who asked for $20. He comes, he goes to, and he's like, he asks him to come with him, and then they all say hell no, and he goes by himself, and then the one he paid $20, okay, I gotta go too, and he shows up with him, but. And then the other guys see it, and then they all run off. They're not very helpful, but
No, but that's what you should do. You see a
yeah,
dead alligator and the guy gets eaten whole. You
yeah,
run.
yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt, yeah. And luckily, yeah, luckily they're like, okay, he's not giving us any money. We get more money. We got to get out of here.
Well, they did take he did take the gun, so he could probably hawk the gun and get some money for that.
Yeah, yeah. I think he
Because I
did.
kept thinking he was going to shoot the alligator, but he
Yeah,
doesn't. He grabs the gun
yeah.
and runs.
Well, I think he made the right choice. Because shooting an alligator might make the alligator come after you.
Oh shit!
I mean, it'd be different if he could save him, but it was already too late, I think.
Oh yeah, which is I'm trying to remember. No, I couldn't remember if after that is where the alligator goes to the pool after he kills him. I keep thinking that entire sequence of the pool where the alligator just sits there all day is like he's digesting whatever he just ate.
Yeah, yeah,
He has a little snack made out of a little child.
yeah. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, yeah. The guy playing the alligator hunter, that Henry Sylvia, though, that's a hilarious character when he shows up. He's just a very offensive acting guy, and it's pretty funny character,
Yeah,
really.
because he reminds me a lot of the Oliver Platt character in Lake Placid. He's
Okay,
offensive
yeah,
to women. He
yeah,
thinks he's better than everyone else,
yeah, yeah.
and he has his own method that does not coincide with anyone else's. Of course,
Right,
Oliver
right.
Platt survives, and this guy gets eaten up. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This Oliver Flatt's character is he definitely does some stuff that comes off very, very I guess like chauvinistic in a
oh yeah,
and yeah, but it's
but it's play for laughs in that one.
yeah, yeah. And I actually like it better when you have a character that like that who learns their lesson, and it has a character change rather than like he's an asshole, he's getting eaten.
Yeah. Well, that is a testament of the time in which this was made.
Yeah.
He was cannon fodder from the very beginning.
Right, yeah.
Asshole, and he'll deserve to get eaten when he gets eaten.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's how I kind of saw it.
Yeah, oh yeah, certainly, certainly.
All right. So, Dave, do you have any other thoughts about the film Alligator?
Well, I guess like real quick, we didn't talk about the director Louis Teague.
Eek.
Yeah, I just a few other films that he's done that I've seen, like Cat's Eye is a Stephen King anthology film. Jewel of the Nile, which is a sequel to Romancing the Stone. Yeah, I thought that was pretty well done. I thought Romancing the Stone is a better film, which also has alligators in it, but but it's and also Navy SEALs, which I saw recently. They have a Vinegar Syndrome release of that, so
Oh, do they? I
yeah,
love that
yeah,
movie.
yeah. It was a lot pretty entertaining though. Yeah, it's a pretty good release.
Oh,
Yeah,
gee,
so
I've seen a lot of Lewis Teague movies, so I was familiar with them. Uh, I love Navy SEALs, but I hadn't seen a good copy of it. Because I don't even have that on DVD.
yeah, it was I think it was last year they did a Vinegar Syndrome Ultra release, so it's a pretty like thick. If you get it from the website, you can get the Vinegar Syndrome Ultra, but if you buy it off of Amazon, you can get it just regular, which will be just the disc and the regular cover, not the slip box that it comes in. But
Oh, I'll have to check into that
yeah,
then.
it's got a slip box and a booklet and stuff on the website. But
Well, he also with Cat's Eye, which we have not discussed in the show yet, is
yeah,
also a great anthology film for me.
right,
Um,
yeah,
so hopefully we'll get around to that one, and we'll get to talk some more about Lewis Teague, who I think, which is why he was able to go back and forth between horror and action movies. And this movie kind of melds all that into one. I've always found his films to be entertaining. Unfortunately, he's not one of the directors that had like these long lasting influences on the horror genre, which is unfortunate. Because
right, yeah. And I mean, he does some strong work here in the directing. I mean, it's a very gritty type of film in a way because it does have that kind of 70s grittiness going, and maybe it didn't translate going forward into horror. Definitely lent more into the action films that happened after this, in the mid 80s.
there were so many of them too.
Yeah.
For me, I hope because there's a lot of alligator movies out there when this came out in the 80s, there wasn't so many of them. Of course, we would soon get movies like Crocodile and Killer Crocodile and a whole bunch of other movies before we hit into the 2000s where crocodiles, alligators, and sharks were like the go-to aquatic monster movie. This is one of the earlier ones. I really enjoy this one because for me, it's different than Jaws because we see the alligator so much. And the practical effects are really good. But then again, Jaws has some great practical effects, in my opinion. We just
Yeah,
don't see Jaws. We don't see the Bruce. We don't see Bruce enough because it's getting work most of the time.
right. It actually like worked pretty good for the film, and like most people consider that to be one of the best horror movies ever made.
Yeah.
Which is definitely up there, and it actually worked in its favor,
Yeah.
which makes it very alarming when you see this alligator on display. So about halfway through it, this alligator just pops out of the sewer, busts through the sewer, and
But
comes out. It's like okay, here we are.
now, of course, it seems a little hokey that this damn alligator has enough strength
Yeah,
to bust through who knows
yeah,
how many layers of cement and
yeah.
everything else above it. But it makes
It's the mutation from the eating the dogs. I mean,
steroids.
at least you got that explanation to explain anything about the alligator does. You have a little bit of an explanation. It's good to have that too because it's
Yeah.
like you don't want people thinking too much. You need to give them a reason why this alligator is different than a normal alligator,
Mm-hmm.
and so it can do things beyond what a normal alligator can do. Otherwise, you're going to be in a script situation where the alligator's got to go like, which he kind of does a little bit here. He goes and hangs out in the water for a while he's digesting, but he doesn't have to do it as frequently because of the explanation.
Yeah. Well, and the great thing is that with a lot of these films in the early 80s and probably to the later 80s as well, we had a lot of mutated monsters either due to steroids, experimentations by our government, what have you, became a
Yeah,
staple of horror genre. I can name a whole list of movies in which that's a plot device. And but it wasn't as much a cliche in 1980 when this came out as it was in the later 80s when it seemed to be the explanation for every giant insect, every giant monster there was. It
yeah.
was steroids, experimentation. It's still a cliche that's
Yeah.
being used today.
Well, I mean, I'd rather there be some ridiculous explanation than it's just a regular alligator. They got put down in the sewer, and then became big in the sewer, and then all of a sudden can do all this crazy shit that he does. You know, it's which it's the idea of it being in the sewer to begin with is pretty scary. But then you have to have a reason for the characters to be down in the sewer. You know,
Yeah.
uh,
No, I won't. I will not disagree with you on that one.
yeah.
All right. So we're at that point in our show where we kind of sit back, relax, and try and rate the movies from 1 to 5 according to their quality. Number one being poor, number five being excellent. Where on the spectrum would you place this movie, Alligator?
I'm probably gonna say a 3.5 on Alligator.
Okay. I'm actually going to put this a little higher. I'm going to put this at 4, only because I think that the writing is really strong in this film. And I think that it is still strong in this film, despite some of the flaws that we would say are flaws in this day and age. Whereas in 1980, when the film first came out, it wasn't, a lot of the flaws that we see now weren't flaws back then. Um,
Like, yeah, I mean, well, to me, the biggest flaw is just the underdeveloped romance subplot.
romance.
That's as far as the other plots. I think they're products of their time, you
Yeah.
know, and I think it's to me, I like seeing things that they wouldn't do now in movies because it just because you're like, okay, cool, they're doing that because now everybody they wouldn't do it, you know. So I like seeing it sometimes in films.
Well, I'll tell you this: a modern day version of alligator, where we would see an alligator this big, wouldn't be mutations. It would be a prehistoric alligator that found its way into a canal system that then led into the sewer. That would then be huge and then wreak havoc on the city before somebody comes along and says it's a prehistoric beast and we don't need to kill it, we need to save it. But then there's someone who's a big game hunter who just wants to kill it and put it on their wall as a trophy. That's pretty.
Yeah.
So they'd be trying to save the prehistoric alligator, giant prehistoric alligator, while also being it killing people. But it would never
Yeah.
kill any kids because kids are off limits.
Yeah, sometimes they are, but it probably wouldn't kill any kids, and then the person who's trying to save it would end up getting eaten, you know, because it's like,
Yes, but the only one who was dumb enough to believe that the alligator was a prehistoric alligator to begin with, who was probably laughed at first, would be Jason Statham, like in
yeah,
the Meg
in
movie.
bag, yeah,
Someone who can do some cool shit while also
yeah,
battling these prehistoric beasts. And it would
yeah,
be PG-13, and it would be a major big budget film, like Jurassic World. That's how I see.
yeah. I yeah, I do like it that they like they don't believe him at first about the alligator, but that's resolved pretty quickly. I
Yeah.
do like it that they don't stay with that for so long, but then they do more annoying shit like kick him out for because the colonel guy shows up. You know, it's
There's
yeah,
always going to be some political person with
yeah,
power trying to manipulate the people below you. That's in those movies in the 80s and in movies in nowadays. So there's always going to
yeah,
be the corporate person who got to get killed at some point because,
yeah,
that won't
yeah.
change. That won't change no matter what decade the movie is based. That will never
You could also, I mean, you can also have that person have a comeuppance and realize their error. You know, a lot of times, which not a lot of times. Occasionally, it's good to mix it up. So that's like it's good to see the assholes get killed, but it's also good sometimes to have them realize the fault in what they've done and they need to change it. I think a good example of this and this is Gremlins 2. You see Gremlins 2?
Yes.
Like that character that geez, John Glover plays. He's
Yeah.
like owns this big high rise building, and he's like all about that. And then he sees like a model for Kingston Falls, which is the older town. And then after the Gremlins take over the building, and he fights them, and that kind of character you think should get killed, but he doesn't get killed. He actually changes his mind. He's like, you know what, we're going to get out of this building these buildings, and we're going to start building like a small town America again. So. So that was like that was a pretty cool realization that the character realized, okay, what I'm doing here is going too far with it. They even have the genetic research lab in the building that they're they're like experimenting on things there. So
Experimenting on everything. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Oh my God. uh, for everyone listening, we have not done Gremlins or Gremlins 2 yet for the podcast, but we'll get to those.
Yeah. Count me in for Gremlins too. That was awesome.
All right. So, any final thoughts, Dave?
It's a movie about a giant alligator. It's just it's a fairly effective film. It's not necessarily scary, but it does have a combination between the 70s like hard, I mean not hard, like 70s detective films mixed with Jaws, mixed with a little bit of scariness about alligators in the sewer. So I think it's a pretty well done movie, and 3.5 is probably too low for the film. I think if you asked me a few years ago, I probably would have rated it a 4. I think on the rewatch, I saw more flaws than I saw last time, so I went down half
Yeah.
a point.
Oh
But
no, I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I saw more this time rewatching it than I have when I was growing up. That's some of the stuff that made me like it more now. But I also recognize that when it was made,
yeah, yeah,
I
and
think
like some of the stuff is. I mean, I think it's like even though they do downplay some of the items that are so important to the story, they're so subtly in there. I mean, not so subtly to us now, but back then,
yeah.
like the experiment with the dogs, and then eating the dogs. That's what gives the alligator its power. Like that's really important to. I think, especially as an adult, and you're trying to make the story make sense and make the alligator being huge make sense. It's so important to make you not sitting here being annoyed about the film while you're watching it, you know?
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. All right. Well, thank you, Dave, for discussing this film Alligator with me. And for everyone out there, I hope that you've enjoyed our conversation about Alligator as part of our aquatic horror film month. Make sure you check out all the other episodes that we've done that are about aquatic horror. Those episodes are released every Monday at 8 a.m. As for our regular episodes, they'll be released every Wednesday at 8 a.m. They are going to be different types of episodes, as our regular listeners know, but you can go through and watch or listen to those as well. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, share, do that thing you do with your favorite podcast, whether it be on your favorite podcast app, Spotify, or YouTube. With that, we want to thank everyone from Something Wicked Entertainment. Would like to thank you for joining us. Make sure that you enjoy the rest of this month's aquatic horror, and make sure to go out there and enjoy a little bit of Alligator out there with your jaws. From everyone here, thank you and have a pleasant day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.